Welcome to the ITSP Magazine Podcast Network. You are about to listen to the Soulful CXO podcast with Dr. Rebecca Wynn. These conversations focus on the intersection of technology, business, and humanity, exploring how these three areas impact each other. Dr. Wynn interviews guests, including business leaders, entrepreneurs, and experts in various fields, to share insights and experiences on cybersecurity, risk management, and leadership. The podcast aims to provide a fresh perspective on how technology can be leveraged to create positive change in the world. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Soulful CXO. I'm your host, Dr. Rebecca Wynn. We are pleased to have with us today Chris Roberts. He is considered one of the world's foremost experts on counter-threat intelligence, also known as Dr. Dark Web. He has over 20 years' experience working in enterprise, industrial, and government segments, addressing evolving security threats. He gained global attention in 2015 for demonstrating the risk to aviation that allowed attacks against flight control systems. He is highly sought-after keynote speaker on many advisory boards where he and I first met, and has had too many published works to list here, so search for all his works. Chris, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here and hang out again. That's the fun part about it. We get to hang out again, which is kind of nice.
I was going to wait a little bit while for this, but we talk about all the generative AI that's going on and how that's affecting ransomware as a service. What are your thoughts on that? I know it's scary for me. What do you think?
It's interesting. It's when you take a look at artificial intelligence, you've got the regular narrow stuff, you've got the general AI, and then to your point, you've got generative AI, where you start getting into language, linguistics, and human interaction with this entity that you can text and have an interesting, shall we say, conversation with.
What do you see in your world happening with the syndicates that are out there and the nation states out there? Do you see them using the generative AI, like maybe using the plugins and things along those lines, those API calls, or do you see them using it in another fashion?
All of the above and more. You take a look at some of the folks taken off that intelligent architecture, and they've taken their own data sets. And now you start taking a look at some of the amazing, counter-intel is probably one way of looking at it. You start taking a look at the disinformation and misinformation side of the world. So what people tend to forget is with any good, there's also the ability to do bad. Using ChatGPT-4, they're putting more disclaimers in place. Hi, I am an AI system, but please be aware, I'm programmed by people. I'm like, yeah, who's people? And then you start taking a look at the data sets that is being used to learn. We used to do adversarial intelligence, which is you teach it, here's a picture of something, and I teach it, here's an absolutely different thing that you're meant to be learning that it is. We did a talk a while ago about making pigs fly and how you show it millions of pictures of these things and go, this is a pig. But if you change literally about less than a couple of % of the pixels, you turn it into an airplane. Now, adversarial intelligence. And you take that idea and that little bit of humor there and you start going, okay, how do I apply it to politics? How do I apply it to disinformation around humans in general? The problem comes back to humanity. How do we ask people to question more? How do we take it away from going, like Google, do I pick your politician? You get the information asked for, but potentially you don't get the stuff in that database. It's now, how do people ask more questions and how do you learn what's truth, what's disinformation, what's FUD, what's handed over by a true intelligence system with disclaimers versus what I poisoned it with?
Yeah, that's extremely dangerous. I'm always wondering about, too, is we've been using it for modeling for a long period of time. If it can break out, how do we know the events are the true events or hallucinated events, or are they hiding events? What do you see along those lines?
Unfortunately, quite a lot. Now I have to question that data. No longer can I trust the data set that I have, or I can't trust the model or the engine that I have or the system that I have. I've got to have so many other checks and balances to validate and verify. We used to do that. As humans, we've done the same. You don't trust one source. You have a level of belief. Then you try to validate it, break it. Let me try to actually put some kind of scientific process around this to see whether it's valid or not. And eventually you come to a conclusion. I can't expect most people to do that. They're going to trust what they hear. If they hear planes backing into mountains, or we've lost more people at sea, or a ship has turned upside down, or whatever goes into the, who do I trust? What am I meant to believe? How many sources do I have to pull in as a human being, as somebody who actually asks more questions, cannot trust the data that's coming out of maybe the sources? It gets rough. That's us. I don't expect my mother to ask the computer 10 different bloody questions to get one set of answers, but that's where we're going with this intelligent architecture.
Yeah, it goes back to coming back to the human with the critical thinking. And
Yeah.
just because something comes out of a search engine or a chatbot or something similar along those lines does not mean it's necessarily the truth. I will tell you, I went on a show and a person gave this bio, and I'm like, and it was a live event. I'm like, no, I was never the VP of Information Security for the Girl Scouts of America. I've eaten Thin Mint cookies, but they had actually put in ChatGPT, and it said I was a VP of Information Security for the Girl Scouts of America. And there was just one of the many things. And I'm like, could I get those past paychecks? I would be fine.
And that's okay. So that was interesting. This is where again, the new version was out. We were messing around with version 4 for this talk I gave. And I'm asking it questions, as in, do you lie? And I'm asking all these questions. And what is interesting about the new version is those first couple of sentences. I'm an intelligent system, but I do this and this, and I have got data behind me, and I have got programmers. And then it goes into a couple of paragraphs of stuff. And those first 2 paragraphs are pretty accurate. Those next couple of paragraphs, you're like, where the heck is it pulling this from? And again, back to humans, they're going to look at it and they'll go, oh, that's great. Unless as a human, I speak up and I go, actually, that isn't correct. How do I correct that? What's my recourse for correcting anything on the internet these days? It used to be, you couldn't on Google, but you could at least put an error system in. Same thing with Wikipedia, you could put an error correction capability in or something like that. But nowadays, if ChatGPT is lying to you and you don't know it, or if you realize it, what's your recourse? 1-800-ChatGPT?
Yeah. Holy crap, Batman. One of the things that we saw recently is when the lawyer went ahead and did his briefing, and then it cited cases and all that stuff. And then he turned it in, and the judge came back to him here in the United States and was like, there's no such case whatsoever. They made up the cases.
Yeah.
They sounded feasible.
But it's not allowed to make it up. It's pulling data sets and sources from disparate systems. This is back to the garbage in, garbage out. This is the data swap. This is who's doing checks and balances on that data that it's learning from. We get told that it's a set of programmers and developers and coders. Great. There aren't enough people out there to keep track on everything that's been on ChatGPT. So now we get into this. How much is it learning from its own data? How much is it learning from, and then how is that model actually training itself, learning from itself and validating it?
No, right. I was reading the other day about ChatGPT 5, and they said ChatGPT 5 basically digested all the information that's ever been created in humanity. I'm really wondering about the hallucinations and stuff like that possibly come there just because you talked about swamp. What is that on swamp on steroids? And if you've been able to digest all the information that was made by humanity, that would be.
So now let's take that in. Let's look at that from context. If we break the internet down so everybody understands it, we have the open stuff. So the stuff you find on Google, just the clear web, regular internet of things. Not internet that's all over the place. Then you've got stuff that's typically behind paywalls, register walls. And that's everything from your regular library to stuff that's sitting behind individual systems. Then obviously you've got the darker stuff. And so the question then becomes, and that stuff is spread all over the place. You've got the regular good old Torn onion, but then you've got 15 different flavors of that, let alone the IRC, IQ, and all the other stuff. So my question is, where's it learning from? Is it learning purely from the open web? And what did you do? Did you just pipe it to Wikipedia and Facebook and give it a feed? And then how often is it learning that? Because having built a couple of these engines over the years, that takes a ridiculous amount of compute, like an absolutely astronomical amount of compute. Not just to learn it, but to crawl everything to learn it and then cross-reference with it, and then also start building relationships. You build a data set, that data set is absolutely useless unless you build a relationship between those two disparate pieces of data. Is it a strong relationship with that correlatory effects? Is it a weak relationship? Is it purely a subset of a relationship because somebody abstractly knows the third cousin on this side of the family tree, therefore whatever? So that question becomes in a data and a data standpoint, who built that engine? And how often is somebody re-looking and re-refreshing and understanding those data sets? And I'd argue it ain't where it needs to be.
No, because, the right to be forgotten isn't the right to be forgotten. I wish we could opt in, not opt out. But to your earlier point, who is correcting the data and to which bot area, for lack of a better term, is it being corrected? Because they don't correlate per se against each other. So how do you get, if you do inject corporate data or customer data or privacy data or pre-SEC filing data
Yeah.
into the system? It's like, if they're not private, there's nothing private about them. How do you sanitize that data back?
We know blocking tactics very rarely actually work. People find ways around it. So what we're doing is educating, back to that human conversation again. Say, look, if you want to know who's got the recipe for Chick-fil-A or any of that stuff, feel free to ask ChatGPT that. Please go ahead, enjoy yourself, have at it. But if you're working on, let's say, fluid modeling for supersonic travel, don't ask ChatGPT about that because, again, once it's out there, it's out there. You ain't pulling that back. We saw that one. Gosh, who was it? There was something that was in the news. Unfortunately, it was another military leak. Something got put up and it pulled down like stupid quickly, but not before it had been reshared, like ridiculous amounts of times. We're talking minutes. So yeah, if you type it on a computer, the chances are it's going to end up on the internet somewhere at some point in time.
Yeah, right now, statistics say, and I think they're understated, that 7 to 10% of corporate information is going into generative AI. I think that's understated because the other thing is, if you're watching people on their computer at work,
Yeah.
are they pulling it out on their phone? Are they doing it in some other place that you're not watching? Because you can't watch every single system that someone is attempting to touch.
No, you can put controls in place and the standard stuff in place and some data leakage and some other interesting stuff. To your point, no, we're humans. We find ways around things. This iPad is here. I'm at my mother's table, but I can still work on it. Do I go through certain browsers, settings, and multi-factor authentication of VPNs? Absolutely. But that's because I'm a little more fanatical, shall we say, is trying to put stuff in place to make sure. But for the most part, I see way too many companies who are like, yeah, here it is. Go on, have at it. And I'm like, that's just all going to end in tears.
And as we expand a little bit on that, I had spoken to a couple of CEOs and they said, yes, we have training in place. We've actually adopted an acceptable use for using AI, intelligence, generative AI. But you know what? I just go run the proxy and do whatever I want to. So I tell people, you have to be walking the walk and showing by example, making it part of your fiber of the culture. And it's like you said, it starts with humans.
Yeah. I hate the training for the sake of training. If
Check
you
the
are
box.
flipping true, we talked about this beforehand. If the mentality is check the box and you do your quarterly training or annual training, congratulations. You literally have put the tick in the box. But if you're actually going to do it properly, you've got a channel set up on Slack. You've got a monthly training awareness. Your people are bought in. They are actually telling you when the scammers hit them and you get screenshots of the stuff. And you reward, you say thank you, you give out gift cards, all this stuff. That's doing it properly. That's actually when you and the teams running it. Now you're still going to have rubber. Stuff's still going to happen, which is why you have training, which is why you have incident response procedures, which is why you have monitoring, and which is why you have tabletop exercises to go, hey, somebody clicked on stuff. It's live. What do we do now? And so again, so many organizations just are not at that point. And that doesn't take much. That's not serious maturity. That just means you got to put your hand up and take ownership.
I think one of the best compliments I ever got back on doing training and talking and its ability is a person went in and they said, I want to let you know, I was going to do something at home. And then immediately I stopped because it says, what would Rebecca do?
Yeah.
She would not do it this way. And so
Yeah.
I didn't. I'm like, what would Rebecca do? She told us to do this. And they applied it at home. That's what it is. You need to make it a 24-hour-a-day culture, inside work, outside work. And that's how I think you can make things a lot more effective. Plus, it's a better ripple effect human-wise because that can be generational effects on someone's life, especially if it hits their finances or something like that.
That's how it should be done.
Chris, our time has run short. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Honored.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Soulful CXO podcast with Dr. Rebecca Wynn, part of the ITSP Magazine podcast network. If you learned something new and this conversation made you think, then add this show to your favorite podcast player. Subscribe to the ITSP Magazine YouTube channel and share the ITSP Magazine podcast network with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to connect your brand to our conversations and our audience, visit itspmagazine.com to learn how to sponsor one or more of our shows. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey.